absolutely different. That's what I expected, what I know, what is my experience. And because of so really realistic, detailed example, you can live through that experience. You can smell things, you can see them. And I have to say that some of the citation I use freely in my life, even such books as we read as children or books that we read to our children, they explain deeply ingrained values of the society. So every time I move to a new country, and I've done it many times,
Our guest is Natalie.
thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to participate. Thank you, Kamala.
And I would like to remind that Dr. Mikhaylov has facilitated one of our book club sessions dedicated to classic novel Master and Margarita by Bulgakov. Thank you, Natalie.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Today we would like to ask you some questions about the books you have already read and maybe give some recommendation to our viewers. What books have played special role in your professional and personal development, and maybe you will recommend some books for recreational purposes?
Okay, thank you, Kamala. I have to say that it's a very difficult question, and I've been thinking about that since I was invited, and it was very, very difficult to single one book or even several books, because I think each book you read somehow contribute to your development, professional, personal, or actually it's a good recreational book. Otherwise, I wouldn't be reading it. So if it has no values. So I was thinking, and several kind of favorites came to mind, but probably I will start with the professional thing. Because that's something that comes to mind more easily than my personal favorites. Obviously, I have not started reading professional literature until much later in my life. I started reading actually late in life. I started reading just when I was already 7 years old, but before that, my parents, my grandmother was reading books to me. But obviously, professional literature I started reading at college. So the first book that comes to mind is an absolute classic in that cultural dimension by Geert Hofstede, and that's the book that's kind of started the cross-cultural management as a science, and as it was put by another scholar of cross-cultural management, it's easier to cross the desert without stepping on the sand than talk about cultures without mentioning Geert Hofstede. So that was kind of cornerstone and something that I read in college and actually helped me to understand that what I want to study, that is my thing, that's really my passion. And being a very multicultural person myself, being born in one country, studied in another, working in many other countries, cross-cultural management and dimension is something I'm very curious about, and I actually study it myself already. Obviously, I would not inspire even to be such a well-known classic as Geert Hofstede, but obviously he is an inspiration. So professional, that would be the most important book. However, moving to the personal, I have to say that all books that I've read somehow contribute also to my professional development, because even such books as we read as children or books that we read to our children, they explain deeply ingrained values of the society. So every time I move to a new country, and I've done it many times, 10 already, and still counting, that I would be reading actually fairy tales and books for children to understand exactly what children are taught and what are the important kind of values, cornerstones, understand better. So even reading for my daughter when she was little, that would be for her recreation and development, but also for my professional development, and just one of my favorite actually books, and the children books, would be Finnish Family of Moomin Trolls. Now, of course, we can have a lot of videos, but books are better. They are really, really talks about all different things. And as a person growing up in a different cultural environment from my family, I found inspiration there. And that's the values that's important for Finns, but I think for everybody. Self-reliance, being always optimistic. When strangers come to your door, the concern that you should have if you don't understand them, how many pillows they would need and what they want to be cooked for their birthday, and actually when is their birthday. So that is very, I would say, Finnish Scandinavian values: hospitality, self-reliance, and that's a wonderful book, I think, to share with children, but also for adults, because as many good books, it has many values and many really different levels. So children would enjoy the adventures and adults would enjoy philosophical discussion that's really put as a quant science. So going to the personal development, that was the book, and as I said, it was very, very difficult task to single one book or even several books. I already talked about Master and Margarita. Obviously, this book made a great impression on me, so I'm not going to repeat myself, but I was thinking that looking at the book that was really moved my worldview, it would be 100 Years of Solitude by Garcia Marquez. And he started a school of magic realism that is still followed in Latin America and actually worldwide, when a very realistic events happen, but the background is magical. So somebody gets alive to heaven but takes the laundry with them. Or something like 2-year flood that people were swimming in the street. Actually, you might think that it's fantasy, but magical look of the realistic events actually prepared, I think, me for things that we would not imagine. For example, not going to the kind of unpleasant recent past, but I would not imagine that we would be locked down and live through quarantine COVID, but if there was 2-year flood, why not 2-year quarantine? So that was a very different outlook on family, ambitions, development. And I was happy to say that when I came to Colombia, I wasn't disappointed. It's a very magical country and very down to earth, and there is indeed a lot of yellow butterflies that fly around. So that would be, I think, the most kind of thing that's influenced me as a person, open a new worldview, and not just this, but showed that things could be absolutely different. That's what I expected, what I know, what is my experience, and because of so really realistic, detailed example, you can live through that experience, you can smell things, you can see them. And I have to say that some of the citation I use freely in my life, for example, when I don't like somebody, I call them bravo burros, like stubborn donkeys. It sounds better in Spanish. So that's,
how do they sound in Spanish?
Bravo burros.
Bravo burros.
Yeah, like burrito, burros. So when you call somebody bravo burros, it's better than say that they're stubborn as a donkey. So that's a very useful expression, I would say. So going to my recreational thing, again, I would say that it's very difficult to single one thing that is recreational but not useful in your work. But I think I wasn't thinking about recreational when you talk to me, so that is from the top of my head. I would recommend books by Terry Pratchett of the Discworld. And it was, I stumbled across them just by chance. Normally I would not even buy books with like very cartoonish cover, so sometimes I do judge the book by its cover, but I was expecting to be on the train all night. It's like I would not sleep, something to read. It was really a wonderful find. And again, that's books on different levels. So it's fairy tales, so even young children can enjoy them, but then it has a deep political, philosophical, and actually spiritual meaning. And obviously, being a fantasy, it happens in another galaxy on the flat world, but it's a reflection on our world. And actually, I use one of those books, no, actually two books, actually in my classes to talk about entrepreneurship and communication. So the truth was used for communication and going postal for entrepreneurship. So students enjoy it, and that gave them kind of unusual look at that. So I think that's what I would again recommend most deeply as start early. And if you're already not a child, looking at that, start your children early. Fairy tales, books for children, particular classic books, really teaches us the basic values and open the child's mind to different views, different countries, makes them, and that's a speech on my professional development, culturally agile. And then never stop reading, because actually research has found, and I've read it just last week, that books are better for your actually nerves and recreation, that's even meditation or running. So it's very healthy pastime. So do you have any other question, Kamala?
Not for today. Maybe we'll have another session for this, yes. And we would like to invite you for our next book club if you want to facilitate any of.
Thank you so much, Kamala. I would be happy to. And as you see, I have several books that I will be happy to share my love and experience of reading with our viewers and with the whole wide community. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie.